I sighed as I stared at my phone screen, reading the message from my mother for the 5th time. Claire, we need $1,500 for the Christmas party. We're having guests, need decorations, food, and a new dress for Casey. You'll send it, right? No please, no, how are you doing? Just a straight demand for money, as usual. I'm Claire, by the way. 30 years old, financial manager, and apparently my family's personal ATM. I typed back, I'll transfer the money today, and hit send. Then I added, I hope I'm invited to this party too, and sent a second message. The response came quickly, a single smiley face emoji. No thank you, no confirmation that I was welcome. Just that stupid yellow face grinning back at me. I wasn't even surprised. This had been my life for as long as I could remember. Well, not always. When I was little, before I turned 10, things were different. My parents, Mark and Diane, had been young when they had me, both just 20, and while we didn't have much, I remember feeling loved. There were trips to the park, bedtime stories, and Saturday morning pancakes. Then Casey was born when I was 10, and everything changed. Casey became the golden child, the planned baby. Unlike me, the accident that happened when they were too young and unprepared. My mother suddenly transformed into a parenting expert, devouring psychology books and enrolling Casey in How to Grow a Genius Out of Your Child classes. They played Mozart near her crib and took her to early development programs. Meanwhile, I grew like a weed, mostly unattended and forgotten in the background. I remember finding our family photo albums a few years ago. The ratio of photos was telling. For every picture of me, there were at least 10 of Casey. And in the family photos, I was always off to the side, an afterthought, while Casey beamed front and center. Just transfer the money, forget about it, and focus on work, I muttered to myself as I opened my banking app. I quickly sent the $1,500 to my mother's account, watching my savings for a down payment on my own place shrink yet again. When I graduated high school, I won a full scholarship to a college 2 states away. My parents didn't even come to the ceremony. Casey has a dance recital that day, my mother explained, as if that settled everything. I worked part-time jobs throughout college to pay for my apartment and expenses. My parents never called to check on me, never offered help. I learned to be self-sufficient, graduated with honors, and became a financial manager at a respected firm in the same city where I'd studied. I built a life for myself, away from the constant reminder that I was the less favored child. The irony wasn't lost on me that as soon as I started making good money, my parents suddenly remembered my existence. It started small. Claire, Casey needs new clothes for school. Could you send $200? Or, Claire, Casey wants to take swimming lessons. That's only $300 for the semester. I always said yes. The amount seemed insignificant compared to what I was earning, and some stubborn part of me still craved their approval. Then 2 years ago, the big ask came. Casey got into the local college, my father announced on a rare phone call. We need help with her tuition. Wait, why couldn't she get a scholarship? I asked, even a partial one. After all those educational classes and genius programs you put her through? There was an awkward pause on the line. My parents hesitated before my mother finally said, That's not important, Claire. You shouldn't care about that. You just need to help your sister, it's crucial for her future. So I agreed to pay $1,200 a month for Casey's education. I told myself it was the right thing to do, even as I watched my own dreams of homeownership drift further away. But it didn't stop there. A few months later, they called again. We bought a new car, my father said casually. Gave our old one to Casey for college commuting. The old car was only 5 years old, I pointed out. There you go again, picking on your sister, my mother snapped. Don't be so greedy, Claire. You're the oldest, it's your duty to help. Somehow, I ended up paying their $800 monthly car loan too. Just like that, I was sending $2,000 home every month, money that should have been going toward my future. I consoled myself that it was temporary. Casey would graduate eventually. the car would be paid off. Then I could focus on my own life, my own dreams. As December approached, I ordered gifts online for my family, a designer handbag for Casey, an expensive watch for my father, and a spa package for my mother. Over $1,000 spent, not including the $1,500 for the party. I packed my car for the 6-hour drive home, excited despite everything to spend Christmas with my family. I hadn't been home in almost a year. Too busy working, I told them. The truth was, I couldn't bear to see how Casey was still the center of their universe while I orbited silently on the edges, useful only for my financial contributions. But it was Christmas, and despite everything, they were still my family. I pulled into my parents' driveway at around 7 in the evening. The house was lit up with colorful Christmas lights, and I could see shadows of people moving around inside. Music and laughter drifted through the closed windows. My stomach knotted with anxiety as I grabbed my bags and the gifts I'd carefully wrapped earlier. Taking a deep breath, I walked up to the front door and knocked. After a moment, my mother opened it, her smile faltering when she saw me. "Claire, what are you doing here?" she asked, not moving to let me in. I blinked, confused. "I don't understand." "I sent the money for the party. I texted you I was coming." "You did?" She frowned. "Well, I didn't think you'd actually come. You usually ignore these noisy gatherings." "It's Christmas," I replied firmly. "It's a family holiday. I never miss Christmas." She sighed and stepped aside. "Well, since you're here, you might as well come in. Everyone's already eating." I stepped into the warm house, the smell of roast turkey and cinnamon hitting me immediately. About 15 people were crowded around the dining table and spread throughout the living room. I recognized my aunts, uncles, and a few cousins. Casey sat at the center of the table, wearing a red dress that probably cost a good chunk of the money I'd sent. "Look who showed up," my mother announced, but there wasn't much enthusiasm in her voice. My father looked up from his conversation. "Claire. Didn't know you were coming. Good to see you, kid." He gave me a quick hug before returning to his conversation with Uncle Bob. I stood awkwardly with my bags and gifts, feeling like an uninvited stranger. Casey barely looked at me. "Hey," she said, before turning back to her conversation with our cousin Melissa. I set my bags down in the corner and placed the wrapped gifts under the tree, which was already surrounded by presents. Then I squeezed into a spot at the table beside Aunt Judy, the only relative who ever really asked how I was doing. "Claire, what a lovely surprise," she said, giving my hand a squeeze. "How's work going?" "Good, thanks," I replied, grateful for her genuine interest. "Just got promoted to senior financial manager last month." "That's wonderful, you always were the smart one," she said, loud enough for others to hear. I noticed my mother's lips tighten slightly as she served more mashed potatoes to Casey. Dinner passed in a blur of small talk. I noticed my parents deflected whenever relatives asked about Casey's college or their new car. They talked about Casey's classes and how well she was doing, but never mentioned who was paying for it all. After dinner came the gift exchange. I watched nervously as my family opened the presents I'd bought. Casey barely thanked me for the designer handbag, merely saying, "Cool, thanks," before setting it aside. My parents were a bit more appreciative of their gifts, but their thanks felt hollow. Then my mother handed me a poorly wrapped package. "This is for you, Claire." I opened it to find a plain gray scarf, clearly meant for a man. I recognized it immediately as the kind my Uncle Jim usually wore. He was the only one not at the party. "Thanks," I said, trying to mask my disappointment. They hadn't even bothered to buy me a proper gift. As the evening wore on, relatives began to leave. By 11, only the immediate family and a few of out-of-town relatives remained. Exhausted from the drive and the emotional strain of the evening, I yawned and stood up. "I'm pretty tired, I think I'll head to bed now," I said. My mother looked up from clearing the table. "Oh, your old room is occupied. Your cousins from Riverdale are staying there." "That's fine, I can sleep on the couch in the living room," I offered. She shook her head. "That's taken too." Your Uncle Dave is staying there. I stared at her, confused. So where am I supposed to sleep? My mother shrugged. We weren't expecting you, Claire. Maybe you could find a hotel? On Christmas Eve? Everything will be booked solid. You need reservations weeks in advance, I said, my voice rising slightly. Casey snickered from the kitchen doorway. Guess we don't have room for you. There's no homeless shelter here either. I felt like I'd been slapped. After everything I'd done, the money for the party, the monthly payments for her education, the designer clothes, this was how they treated me? I looked at my father, hoping he'd intervene, but he just gave me a condescending smile and turned away, busying himself with gathering empty glasses. In that moment, something inside me broke. Years of being treated like an outsider, of being used for my money while getting nothing in return, culminated in a clarity I'd never experienced before. I picked up my bags, left the gray scarf on the coffee table, and walked out into the cold December night. As expected, the only hotel in town was fully booked. I called a few old friends from high school, but they were either away or had full houses with their own families. With nowhere to go and a 6-hour drive back to my apartment, I got in my car and started driving. I spent Christmas Eve on the highway, stopping only for coffee and gas. By early morning, I was exhausted and pulled into a roadside motel about halfway home. "Merry Christmas," said the elderly motel owner when I checked in. "You're traveling on Christmas?" "Family emergency," I said, not wanting to explain. He nodded sympathetically and handed me a small box. "Have a piece of Christmas pie, on the house. No one should be alone today." I thanked him, touched by this stranger's kindness, more kindness than my own family had shown me. We chatted briefly about his grandchildren before I went to my room, ate the pie, and fell into an exhausted sleep. I woke up in the afternoon and completed the drive home, arriving at my empty apartment as evening fell on Christmas Day. My parents hadn't called or texted to see if I'd made it safely. But why would they? They'd made it crystal clear that I wasn't family, I was just an ATM. I spent the day after Christmas in a fog. By evening, I decided to distract myself by scrolling through social media. That's when I saw it, Casey's latest Instagram post. Photos from the Christmas party, captioned, "Spent Christmas with the people who matter most." I wasn't in a single picture. Something snapped inside me. I opened my banking app and stared at the scheduled payments, $1,200 for Casey's tuition due on the 1st, and $800 for my parents' car loan on the 5th. With a deep breath, I canceled both payments. "No more," I whispered to my empty apartment. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing from my family. No angry calls about the canceled payments, no texts asking what happened. I threw myself into work, started looking at apartments to buy, and even went on a date with a coworker who had been asking me out for months. Then, in early January, my phone lit up with my mother's name. "Claire," she barked the moment I answered. "Why was Casey called to the administration office today?" "They said her tuition payment is late. You need to fix this mistake immediately." No greeting, no "how are you?" Just straight to the money. "It's not a mistake, Mom, I canceled the payment," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. There was a moment of shocked silence before she exploded. "You what? You can't do that to your own sister. Family helps family, Claire. How could you be so selfish?" "You threw me out on Christmas Eve," I interrupted. "After I paid $1,500 for your party. After I drove 6 hours to see you. You treated me like a homeless person and laughed about it. You're being dramatic, we just didn't have space. You had space for everyone except me. The person funding your Christmas party, Casey's education, and your new car." I paused. "By the way, I've canceled the car payments too." I heard a crash in the background, then my father's voice, "How did you cancel?" "Goodbye, Mom," I said and hung up. My phone immediately started ringing again. I silenced it and watched as calls from my parents and sister piled up. Then the texts began flooding in. From Casey, "You petty, greedy bastard, I always knew you were jealous of me." From Dad, After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Ungrateful daughter. From Mom, you'll regret this, Claire. Family is forever, and you're burning bridges you can't rebuild. I turned off my phone for the rest of the day. The next morning, I woke up to more messages, now from extended family too. Apparently, my parents had been busy, spreading their version of events. Cousins I barely spoke to were now lecturing me about family duty. An uncle I saw once a year was telling me I owed everything to my parents. I was about to mute all their contacts when I saw a message from Aunt Judy. Claire, honey, can we talk? I'd like to hear your side. I called her immediately. Claire, she answered on the first ring. Your mother and the whole family are in an uproar. They're saying terrible things about you. What exactly are they saying, Aunt Judy? I asked. She sighed, that you've always been difficult. That they paid for your college and supported you, and now you're refusing to help Casey even though they're struggling. That they've always helped with your car payments too. I laughed bitterly, none of that is true. I went to college on a full scholarship, worked part-time jobs to support myself, and have never received a cent from them since I was 18. I've been sending them money for years, first for small things for Casey, then $1,200 a month for her tuition, and $800 a month for their car payment. That can't be right, she said, sounding confused. Your mother specifically told everyone at a family dinner last month that they were struggling because they were still paying off your student loans as well as Casey's tuition. I don't have student loans, Aunt Judy. I'll email you all the bank statements. You'll see the payments going from my account to them, not the other way around. I hung up and spent the next hour compiling my bank statements, highlighting the monthly payments to my parents and Casey. I also wrote a brief timeline explaining how I had supported myself through college, gotten a job, and then started sending money home. I attached everything to an email and sent it to Aunt Judy. An hour later, my phone rang. Claire, Aunt Judy's voice was shaking, I'm so sorry. Your mother has been lying to the entire family. And your father has gone along with it. I don't know why they would do that, I said, though part of me did know. They'd been using me while taking credit for my achievements, making themselves look generous and self-sacrificing to the rest of the family. I'm going to set this right, Aunt Judy said firmly. With your permission, I'd like to share these statements with the rest of the family. They should know the truth. Go ahead, I said, feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders. I'm tired of being treated like a walking ATM while they pretend to be supporting me. I'll take care of it, she promised, and Claire? I'm proud of you. For what it's worth, I always saw how they treated you differently from Casey. I should have said something years ago. After that call, I felt lighter than I had in years. 2 days later, my phone started blowing up again, but this time with very different messages. Claire, I'm so sorry for what I said. I had no idea what you've been doing for your sister and parents. We all owe you an apology. Your aunt showed us the proof. Your parents have been lying to us for years. I can't believe what you've been through. Please know that not all of us think like your parents. Apparently, Aunt Judy had created a separate family chat without my parents or Casey and had shared my bank statements and explanation. The truth had finally come out. My cousin Emily called me directly. Your parents are furious with Aunt Judy. They're saying she's turned the family against them. All she did was share the truth, I said. I know, and we're all on your side now. I wasn't sure if I wanted sides at all, but it felt good to have the truth acknowledged after so many years of lies. My parents tried to contact me several more times over the next few weeks. I didn't answer their calls, but I did read their text messages. Casey has only 2 years left in college, my mother wrote. You can't just abandon her education like this. We made mistakes, my father admitted in another message. But punishing your sister isn't the answer. I didn't respond to any of them. Their words still framed me as the villain, as if I was punishing Casey rather than simply stopping the financial exploitation that had drained my savings for years. Aunt Judy kept me updated on the family situation. According to her, My parents were damage controlling frantically, telling anyone who would listen that I had misrepresented the situation, that they had indeed helped me through college, a blatant lie, and that I was being selfish and vindictive. Fewer and fewer relatives believed them now. The bank statements didn't lie. "How's Casey doing?" I asked Aunt Judy during one of our weekly calls, about 2 months after Christmas. "She's had to make some adjustments," Aunt Judy said carefully. "Your parents sold their new car and took back the one they had given to Casey. She's taking the bus to school now." I felt a twinge of guilt, but pushed it away. "And her tuition?" "She's still in school." "Your parents made a big show about having to make sacrifices to keep her there, but I think they've just had to cut back on other expenses. No more fancy clothes or weekly dinners out." "What about Casey? Has she had to get a job?" "Yes, she's working part-time at the campus cafe," Aunt Judy confirmed. "Your mother complains that Casey doesn't have time for her social activities anymore because she's too busy studying and working." I couldn't help but smile at the irony. That sounds exactly like my college experience. "I know," Aunt Judy sighed. "I should have seen what was happening years ago. They treated you and Casey so differently." "Water under the bridge," I said, though we both knew it wasn't entirely true. Some wounds take longer to heal. 6 months passed, spring turned to summer. I continued working, saving, and living my life. I started dating someone seriously, a kind man named Alex who valued hard work and family but understood boundaries. I told him about my family situation early on, and he was supportive without being judgmental. One evening in June, curiosity got the better of me, and I checked Casey's Instagram for the first time in months. The change was dramatic. Gone were the photos of parties, expensive clothes, and carefree college life. Her most recent posts were more subdued, pictures of textbooks with captions about studying hard, photos of her in her cafe uniform talking about the dignity of work, philosophical quotes about the challenges of adulthood. "Life is harder than I thought," read one caption. "Growing up is realizing that nothing comes for free." I stared at my phone, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. Casey was finally learning what real life was like, what I had known since I was 18. Another part felt sad that it had come to this, that my sister and I had been set up by our parents to have such different lives and expectations. I didn't reach out to her, though. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. Maybe someday, but not yet. By fall, I had saved enough for a down payment on a small but modern condo near my office. As I signed the mortgage papers, I felt a surge of pride. I had done this myself, despite my family's drain on my resources for years. "Congratulations, homeowner," Alex said when I showed him the keys to my new place. He helped me move in, painted the walls, and assembled furniture without complaint. It was nice having someone in my corner for a change. A year after that disastrous Christmas, I still hadn't spoken to my parents or Casey. My father's last message had been in October, a brief text that read, "We miss you, Claire. When you're ready to talk, we'll be here." I didn't respond. I wasn't ready, and honestly, I wasn't sure I ever would be. Some betrayals cut too deep to fully heal. Aunt Judy remained my only connection to the family. We met for lunch one Sunday in November, almost a year after everything had fallen apart. "Casey's changed a lot," she told me over coffee. "She's more serious now, more focused on her studies. She's still working at that cafe, even though your parents could probably afford to let her quit." "Good for her," I said, and meant it. "Do you ever think about reconnecting with them?" Aunt Judy asked carefully. I sipped my coffee, considering the question. "Sometimes," I admitted. But then I remember how they treated me at Christmas. How they lied to the entire family about supporting me. How they kicked me out of the house after I paid for their party. And I realize I'm better off without that toxicity in my life. Aunt Judy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're right. And you don't owe them anything, Claire. I just want you to be happy." "I am happy," I said, realizing as I spoke that it was true. "I have a good job, a nice home, friends who care about me, and a boyfriend who respects me. I'm building the life I want, on my terms. That's more than enough. Later that evening, as Alex and I cooked dinner together in my new kitchen, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was another post from Casey. A simple photo of her textbook spread across a library table, with the caption, "Life is hard and it's supposed to be? That's how we grow." I showed it to Alex. "My sister seems to be learning some valuable lessons." "Good for her," he said, stirring the pasta sauce. "Maybe there's hope for her yet." "Maybe," I agreed, putting my phone away. But either way, I'm at peace with my decision. Some relationships aren't meant to be saved, they're meant to be learned from. As we sat down to eat in the home I had bought with my own money, I felt a sense of closure. I had broken free from the role my family had assigned me, the forgotten daughter, the family ATM, the outsider looking in. I had created my own life, my own family of choice. And for the first time in 30 years, I was exactly where I belonged.